Hello and welcome back to the second part of our conversation with Rev Chris and Rev Helen Edwards. We'll continue asking some more questions about some key Fit for Mission topics. Hi Chris and Helen, it's great to have you back with us today. So our first question for today's episode then is, what financial implications have the transition to a larger parish had on collective finances?
Starting with the money question.
Yeah.
I think people had a lot of worries about this, didn't they, before coming into Fit for Mission, and what's going to happen to our money, and will it all go in a shared pot? But I know certainly in St Helens, everyone has their own line on the budget. People's money is their money. We are moving and have moved to one bank account, but I mean, it takes time because we had to get the charitable status first, so it's all, down the line. What's been phenomenal has been having Nick, who's our finance officer, and she's been able to take a lot of the strain on this, which is great. She pays expenses so quickly. It's going to be a long transition, but people still have the same sort of power over their own finances that they did have. We have some poor parishes and some who are richer. So we may be asking a question at some point, how can we help each other? But actually the help we have had for those that perhaps more in need from the Fit for Mission team has been great in terms of helping us get grants for boilers, for kitchens. Some of the churches that just would never have afforded those. We've been able to get that through the infrastructure that's there. And the other thing we've been helped with is trying to get extra income for churches. So we're using our assets, whether it's a hall or the church building, and we're getting support for that as well. So we're trying to make the churches work a bit smarter, really, as well.
Yeah, I think you're ahead of us, as often is the case. So we're still very much working it out. We too have now got a finance officer, but she's literally been working with us for 6 weeks. Right. So that's all really new. But our finance team, which is all the sorts of people who have been managing the numbers and the money in our churches, them coming together has been really important. I think it's taken us a while to get to the point where we are sharing information more freely. But also one of the big things for us is helping every church to use the new software, My Fund Accounting Online. That has revolutionised the way churches are managing their accounts, and it is the way in which we can bring it all together. So it might all be one bank account, but every church has separate financial pages in My Fund Accounting. So you can see what your income is, what your outgoings are. You can keep your funds restricted or designated. And we've said in the protocol document that we're very committed to making sure that a church's money is their money. There is, of course, an ask, which we've not quite figured out yet, which will be to contribute into the central pot to cover the support. But I think people are now valuing the support so much that I'm hoping that will come
we've
easily.
had a bit of a development on that because we're finding that people need a different level of support. So we're going to sort of try and make that more appropriate to each context. Really.
Yeah, I think part of your question was about had on collective finance. I think we're not quite there in seeing the collective picture yet. We're still trying to help every church to actually know what's going on with their own. Yeah. And I keep harping back to the fact that we started this coming out of the pandemic, and what we've realised with regards to finances, very honestly, some of our churches, I think, have been naive or had their heads buried in the sand about their own finances. And when we've finally got churches to create budgets, which is something that was very new to them, we've realised, looking at accounts and looking at budgets, that many churches have been living off reserves for years, and those reserves are very quickly going to run out. So we're not in a financially strong place, but better that we know that. And the fact that if it wasn't for us working together, I don't know that this would have so easily come to light. And then treasurers or finance bods, whatever they want to be called, would have been on their own, isolated in dealing with this. Mm-hmm. But there is support now, as well as what Chris is saying about trying to improve income sources. So things like getting real about how much it costs for us to rent out our halls to somebody. We've got so many other organisations, businesses even, that are using our church buildings and not covering the costs. And we can't do that. And giving the finance teams the confidence and the church leadership teams to make decisions about that, to change their financial fortune so that we can invest in mission, is really really important.
But we've learnt to budget, and for many of the churches, they've never done that before. Because, I mean, as vicars, we're not trained at vicar school to do a budget. I mean, you know.
And we're trying to think our budgets in such a way that they're about mission and not just about paying the bills. It's that, what's your vision? What do you want to fund? Where are you going to get the money from? And some of that is from fundraising, as you say. I think that there's been other strands to it as well. I'd just say parish giving scheme is a wonderful thing, and trying to encourage anyone and everyone to sign up for parish giving scheme is really important source of support for giving and stewardship. We've also had support from the diocese with regards to things like online giving and digital giving. And that's been important, making sure every church can have a card machine. And also agreeing as a group of churches that every autumn we are going to have a focus on generosity and stewardship as part of our sermons and all of that. Because I think many people just do not understand how the church is funded. We've not been good at talking about money. And so part of it has been, okay, let's do this together. And let's bring that conversation out into the open, and in that way hopefully we will improve our collective finances.
Absolutely. And I think it's been a real source of learning for us, you know, in terms of what the gaps are, what needs to be done, even understanding our theology of giving, and as vicars to understand that, as clergy to understand,
changing people from thinking they're donating to actually understanding giving and all that God's given to us, and how we give from the generosity that he gives to us.
But I have to admit that I think it's been tough. I think it's been hard. Getting the treasurers together has been a challenge, and getting everyone to share their accounts, or to get everything on my fund accounting, or to delve into all their different accounts that they've got. That has been a challenge.
And I am quite concerned, given our financial situation, about how we sustain what we're creating at the moment, because support services are brilliant, but they cost money. And we've been supported at this stage with the Fit for Mission grant, which is a startup grant, but it only goes so far. And I'm concerned about setting up support services in such a way that is not sustainable. So we have to get our finances right to make this whole model work.
That leads in quite nicely to our next question then, which is, how has resource sharing and support services across the larger parish worked, and has it been successful?
I think, again, that's a work in progress. It's interesting, we've just been talking about money, because one of the big things we have managed to do together has been generous harvest. So we did a whole thing about giving, like yourselves in the autumn. And I think that's the first thing that we've managed as a clergy team to all agree that we would do, and to actually deliver it. There's been lovely swapsies between churches as well, because you're having conversations. One church has had an excess of chairs, so they've donated them or given them for the time being to another church, and somebody needed something for the coffee, so that's been, just something that's getting dusty in one church is
the barbecue keeps moving around our different churches.
Just because the clergy are meeting, you've got that weekly communication, you can sort of share things. But I think we're still learning how to do that. I think the important thing is we're not making anyone do anything. I think Generous Harvest was the only thing that we actually all delivered.
Yeah, we've agreed to do things twice a year. So we've agreed that we will do a similar Lent course everywhere, and then have some movement around. So sort of in Lent, and then in the autumn for generosity. We've also done some sharing. So we've had a joint Alpha course, which has been supported by a few different churches. We also did some very creative work last Advent with doing Advent window videos and put them out on YouTube. We'd have never managed to do that, but we had lay people from right across the churches just popping up and doing little sort of 1 minute contributions about what Advent means, and based on scripture. So that was an incredible. Things like the newsletter. That's a shared resource. And back at portfolio working, as an example, we have an assemblies team that plan assemblies together, and then go out and deliver the assemblies in a number of different schools across some of our communities. That's been brilliant. That's lay and ordained together. So I think you were also talking about how, as a team, you can use the different people in different ways, and how you can get creative about deploying that. So we've actually had some movement with total agreement and support of some of our curates, and curates being licensed to the whole team and allowing some greater flexibility. And again, when clergy have been off, we have covered each other much more easily.
It's been a great learning opportunity for the curates because they see a lot of different contexts.
I think it's transformed curate training.
Yeah, they can do funerals, or they can cover baptisms, or just sort of learn more.
And learn from a wider group of clergy, different models, different expressions of church.
Yeah. One thing that's come out from our group as well was for this year we're going to have a lens of Jubilee. And so we're going to use that over the year. So we've got a preaching series in January, and then we're going to use that as a lens for the whole year, which I think is going to be really great. And everyone seems to have caught hold of that. So that's going to be exciting to see how that comes out. We're just learning how to do it, but I think that's going to land well.
How has having a support services team released time and resources for both clergy and lay people across the larger parish?
Well, we started with one, and then there were two, and then there were three, and we've got a smashing team. And in fact, if I didn't say they were smashing, they'd tell me off.
Yeah.
But
no, we've got a brilliant team. Who's got the best team?
I'll arm wrestle you for that one. No, they've been great, and I think the communication is getting better and better. I think with that. I think in the initial stages, I think the amount of information that they needed from everyone has been phenomenal, and that has been a pressure for people. And I think it would be wrong to leave that out, really, because it's been getting all the records, all the safeguarding records, all the terriers, and
get
all
people
these
signed
things.
up on Church Suite.
Oh my word, get people signed up on Church Suite. So that's been massive. And I think a lot of that has come down to wardens, really, which bless them, they've delivered. But I think once we get beyond that, I keep saying, right, we've seen a benefit because we've felt the pain of all that information gathering. But what we need to feel is the benefit. But again, with sort of managing funerals through a central place, it means we know the funeral directors are going to get someone to pick up. They know they're going to be able to deliver someone to do the funeral. People can still choose to have the person they wanted and in the place they wanted. We're very flexible. But yeah, I think the support services team has been amazing, really, and just getting better and better. And we've made mistakes, we've got things wrong, but then we just try to get a better system. What didn't work, what will make it better. They've been great, actually.
Yeah, and I think our support services team, getting out and getting to know people and drawing alongside lay people, this is where it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
So especially, let's say, if we talked about church wardens and all the building compliance stuff, having support there to help think through those issues. And so for recruitment, I think in terms of managing the paperwork for like the processing of requests for references and those sorts of things, that's a big lift, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it streamlines it, doesn't it? And it means there is someone that can do that bit on it. I'd like to go back to compliance, though. You mentioned compliance, because that's been phenomenal. And we've got like statistics around that, because our buildings overall were 24% compliant. And bearing in mind that one church was 0%, there was quite a range, and we're up in the 80s now. I mean, that's what worries me is people who aren't going through fit for mission, who are quite ignorant of the fact of these things they need to do, because legislation has changed, things have changed, rules have changed, and we're now sort of at the top of the game trying to get there. And I know everyone's quite confident we're going to be 100% compliant soon. What's been great is she's been able to get one tradesperson to go to several churches. So we've bought in together, and I think that's been great. Or Yvonne's organised it. She's got keys now for a lot of the churches, so she doesn't even have to bother the warden to be there. As long as they're in agreement, she can just go and let somebody in. So that just takes some of that burden. So that's really encouraging. That's been a massive difference that's been made.
We're going to take a short break now, put the kettle on, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here with Helen and Chris, and we're discussing some big fit for mission questions. Our next question then is, how have clergy been able to support each other within the larger parish?
I think this is massive.
Yeah.
I think the sense of clergy team is just transformative, beyond anything we could have imagined. But it has taken commitment, and buy-in, and
sacrifice, isn't it? Like we meet weekly, and it's a big commitment.
But it's absolutely worth it.
Absolutely. And also just noticing people. When you see people weekly, you see if they're okay or not, or chapter, we used to meet once a month, which was great, but if someone didn't come to chapter, it'd be 2 months before you saw them. It could be 3 months if they missed 2. So you didn't get that sense of deep relationship.
In part, it's about business, isn't it? It's about we've got stuff to do, we need to move stuff forward. Clergy are leaders in the churches, and we need fit for mission leading well. So we need good communication. We need to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we have those conversations, and that helps with bringing about the change, because change is not easy. But sharing that journey together and building in support for clergy, I think it's been transforming to clergy wellbeing. I think for many clergy, it's not. Okay, we only work 1 day a week, I know that, but it's not always an easy job, and expectations, and it's difficult at the moment. Leading our churches is not easy. It's not easy for lay people either. I get that, but I think coming together and being able to have colleagues that you share the burden with, and we also look for solutions together, I think is transforming. I was talking to one of our lead lay people just yesterday from one of the churches, and they were talking about their concerns for their vicar being on their own and just what they carried. And they said now they've seen the way the clergy leadership team is working and feel that it is so much more positive, and they are more reassured about the well-being of clergy.
For where clergy have been on their own, I think it's a phenomenal difference. I think some of us were already in teams. And I've had people say, well, we
didn't have any teams in West Derby.
Oh, we had a few. But I've had people say to me, well, why would we need to go in? Because we're already in a team and it works really well. But it's even better on a big scale when there's more of you. Somehow there's that critical mass. It's just, it's more healthy. Because, people are sort of able to notice each other, support each other, share ideas. It's just been really phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, one of the images I often use when people say to me, I don't need to go to church and be a Christian on my own, is that image of coals in a fire, and how when a coal is in a fire, it's kept warm by others, but also you're keeping others warm, if you see what I mean. And when you're the coal out of the fire, you can be a bit chilly and you don't feel a support. And I think that is very much true about, for me, about being a Christian and being alongside others as disciples together. But I think it is also probably a true picture for how it is for the clergy, that it's hard out there.
I think as well, we've been able to recognise each other's gifts more and encourage each other and realise, that person's good at that, so we can ask them to do this, or they shouldn't be doing this bit, they should be doing that bit. And I think that bit of noticing has helped. And we had one person recently who did this theological reflection on Sabbath, and it was an absolute mic drop moment. It was like, everyone was like, wow, that was brilliant. And you don't get feedback like that always. As often we're delivering a lot or giving a lot in churches, and you don't often get a lot of positives back. So I think we can do that for each other, that encouragement.
Yeah, one of our curates is doing, I don't know, it's a master's or a PhD, all about baptismal theology. And they led us in that. And what a gift that was for our clergy together. So I think one of the other aspects of this is the meetings that we have with clergy as one-to-ones. Often as clergy, there was an opportunity once every year or 2 years for a ministerial development review where you had a conversation with somebody about how ministry is going. But actually we're now meeting, Chris and I meet with clergy every month or 6 weeks or so, and spend an hour or two with them, just listening and helping to refocus and supporting. And that's partly about accountability, but it is also very much about support. And I just think that is brilliant. And at first, for me, getting appointments, a bit like trying to get appointments for clergy leadership team and getting people out to that was hard. And at first, people were like, why do I want to meet with you, Helen, for an hour or two? And now actually I can't draw those meetings to a close because we've got so much to talk about, and I think it is making a difference, and it's such a privilege to just draw alongside and support clergy.
Again, it helps you know them more and know their gifts and skills and where their passions are and where their heart is. And I feel,
and also what's hard.
Oh yeah, and we were all called to ministry, and sometimes we get there and then it's all governance and buildings and things that we've not been either trained in or called to. And I think it's about getting back to that basic of, well, what did God call you to do? And are you living out that calling? Because that's the thing that gives you joy and gives you energy, isn't it?
I think we've also been learning how to talk about God together and how to pray together. I think so often we're talking about all the business stuff. So actually having some more time to attend to our own discipleship has been important too, and making time for that, because it would be so easy to just fill all of our meetings with all the business and all the governance.
What strategies have you implemented to address concerns that individual churches may lose some of their control within a larger parish?
Yeah, I think people were worried that they were going to lose, what people couldn't see if they didn't have a PCC, how they'd have any voice. But as we talked before, or on the last podcast, we talked about the growth and vision groups. I feel as team rector, it's important to be visible. So do try and visit the churches so that people can have a conversation, which I think is helpful. And I think the communications is really essential as well. Knowing that each growth and vision team can send something up to the PCC, or can send a suggestion or give some feedback. We have like short form notes from the PCC afterwards. So we try to do like bullet points on one page so that it's accessible, so people know what we've been talking about and what's been covered. But we want the growth and vision teams to be released into mission. It's much easier for the PCC to be making decisions around governance or policies or whatever. We really didn't need 12 or 11 parishes, PCCs, to be agreeing that. Hopefully this is really going to release people into looking at vision and growth in their local teams.
I think it's helping them to make time for that. So talked about the pyramid reviews, and that is so focused on what do you want to do locally, what are you called to do, not what are we doing together, but what about you, and how are you going to resource that. And the responsibility is theirs for vision and for resourcing and for making it work and following through on it. Earlier, I think I referenced our sort of vision statement about growing Christ-centred communities that enable everyone to flourish. It is so much, we just keep pointing people back. It's about the churches flourishing, it's about individuals flourishing. And only when they flourish will we flourish together in that way. Yeah. And again, that phrase that I'll keep coming back to, which actually is a phrase that I learned from Church Wigan, I'm not going to claim it, which is about acting locally, supporting centrally. This is not about doing things at the centre. This is about the churches making a difference in their local communities, doing it in their way, but longing to be Christ-centred and to flourish in that place. It's not about losing control, it's about gaining support.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
We were talking recently about role descriptions that are needed as part of the safer recruitment thing. And we have sought to create a whole bank of them, but on every single one of them there's a space for local particularities. It's that we've resourced you and now you've got to make this your own. But we've done it together as well, so we've involved lay people from across the churches in producing that. So in terms of how have we shared resources, we've shared time and commitment to producing these things, which we frankly didn't have, we should have had.
It's trying to sort of hold the weight of the governance, isn't it, and all the legal things, so that responsibility is taken away, so people can act locally. I think that's really, really important. I don't know about you and your support services, but ours is in one of our fairly central churches. So it's quite accessible, and I love to come in and I say, this is a warden from St. wherever, or the treasurer's popped in, and there's that accessibility, so people do have a voice in, and they can come and see like the finance manager or the buildings manager.
I think the other thing is we haven't done lots of things that are, okay, everybody come to this central point, which I think is what people feared and thought that's what it would be, that we wouldn't have our local church, that we would have one joint carol service or one joint Ash Wednesday service or whatever. It's not like that. It is about flourishing locally.
But on the other side, we've been able to advertise like all the Advent services and things, so people can go, we haven't got a Christian, we'll go to that one over there. So there's that fluidity. And we had one couple who really loved, we did, some people were doing book club, I think, last Lent, and they went to a different church because they wanted to have a different experience. I think, isn't that lovely that you can just have that freedom, but they still belonged because they were Church St. Helens, so it was still their church. So I think that's a real positive.
How do you feel about Fit for Mission improving mission in your area, and do you feel it's delivered on the 4 missional priorities, which are introducing people to Jesus, deepening discipleship, developing Christian leaders, and working for justice?
Oh, absolutely. We've done it all. I think it's a work in progress. I think we're getting there.
And it is about how it's happening locally.
Yeah, yeah.
We've talked about some of the things throughout the podcast that, for instance, like the raising Christian leaders or encouraging that, for instance, how together we've been doing that. So, we talked about the church wardens or the finance coordinators, officers, how they've been invested or supported in their roles. That's about discipleship, and it's about Christian leadership.
Yeah.
Working for justice for us. I think we're looking forward to the justice community starting and the support of Together Liverpool for those. But our eco churches, we are moving forward. I think one more of our churches has just applied for their eco gold, another is only just signing up. So that is moving forward. And introducing people to Jesus is a conversation we keep talking about as to what does that mean? What does it mean in an evangelical tradition? What does it mean in a more Anglo-Catholic or a choral tradition? How do we help people to get to know Jesus, or do we need to phrase that differently? We keep returning to it, and we have run alpha courses, but we've also encouraged people to get out and have one-to-one conversations to explore that, and to make sure that these 4 priorities are part of our teaching and preaching, because we have got lots of people who are only in church on a Sunday. So talking about this really matters.
And it's very much a continuing journey, I imagine. You might be further ahead than other cohorts, but actually you're still at the beginning of your journey as well.
And I can hear in some of the things you've done, I think, oh gosh, Helen's done more in that than we have. And it is local. It's what fits at the time, doesn't it, and what's best. And it's not a competition. No. Well, Helen and I try to. There was a moment in the Cultivate programme where at the end people are invited if they want a one-to-one conversation, like a coaching conversation, and all the clergy came because it was quite a big, there's a lot of people. And what was lovely was people had the opportunity to speak to someone that they didn't know. Yeah. And all the clergy were there from different churches, and everyone just mixed in. And I remember standing at the back and seeing all these conversations going on, and it was just lovely. Yeah, that was really delivering, I think, on those things. It was deepening people's discipleship. We were definitely raising Christian leaders, and what they were going to go out to do was to introduce people to Jesus and to work for justice. So it's getting there, but we're going to continue to just get there, aren't we? We're never going to have achieved it. It's just a journey.
I have a real passion about deepening discipleship and what a challenge that is to the church. And I'm just so open to finding out other ways in which we can do that and do it effectively. I think some people in our churches don't realise there's a discipleship journey that they're invited onto, and just finding ways to express that is so important. I think, we're called to be apprentices, disciples, to be more than bums on seats. It's a challenge. And only as we discover our discipleship, who we are in Jesus, will we grow into leaders and do work for justice, which is based on Christian faith. We're not the only people in our world working for justice. Don't have to be Christian to work for justice.
What do you think are some of the greatest obstacles of moving Fit for Mission forward, and how do you think they can be overcome?
One of the things was we're constricted by how we have done church in the past, and a lack of imagination about doing it differently. I think it's sort of, we've just sort of dropped something onto what people have known as their traditions and what they have valued and how it's been done for generations, but frankly it's not altogether working. I think as well an obstacle has been maybe we've in our churches got a bit complacent or a bit distracted by running church and not focusing on those 4 missional values of introducing people to Jesus, deepening discipleship, raising Christian leaders, doing justice, seeking justice. I'm going to risk sounding a bit judgmental about church. I've been leading church for a while, but it's that we haven't invested at times enough of our energies in encouraging people to grow as a disciple of Jesus. We maybe spend an awful lot of time preparing for good Sunday services that can sometimes be more about performance than about worship and discipleship. Or we have taught people that church is about a bit like a club that you come to once a week and you come along and attend, and actually being a Christian is a 24/7 life commitment. It's about relationship with God. And I think sometimes those sorts of things have been a barrier to Fit for Mission, in that Fit for Mission is getting back to the core things, which should be about what churches are about. And we've got distracted along the way.
Absolutely.
And we've got to, calling people back to that is actually quite radical. And we hit resistance in that. I don't know, do you recognise what I'm saying?
I really agree. It's funny because I was thinking practically, but I really like what you said, and I really agree with that. And I think, it's getting back to basics, isn't it? I think time was a real challenge. We needed loads of things that needed doing, and they needed doing yesterday, or, and getting information off people was just really, really tricky. I think people had a lot of fear. I think that was a big obstacle. And people then, that sort of made people anxious or angry. And then people don't listen and they don't hear what you're saying. So, you can't sort of reassure people. And I think money. I think people have been really worried about their money and forgetting that it's God's money and that nobody wants it. I used to say it's not about money. That's like a side issue. It is around faith, isn't it? It's about sharing Jesus. It's about sharing the love of God. Money's sort of a secondary thing. If we get the other things sorted out, the money will sort itself out. I mean, we're not doing that. We are sorting out the money, but
to go back to some of what I was saying about how it's always been in the past, is that it has been that every church has got to fend for their own corner. And that's one of the things that we are challenging and trying to have an imagination that a bit more like, the early church, that we're brothers and sisters in Christ, sharing resources and called to the one vision and the one mission and, Jesus' great commission in that way. And still, I think there is an obstacle for Fit for Mission moving forward, is that some churches are more protective still of their corner and what they've achieved and where they're at, and they're okay. I've been really encouraging people who I speak to think about the needs of their brother and sister down the road and what's happening in the church down the road. When all is well in yours, great, well bless another, support another, because it is hard. And we need the whole church to be thriving in every community. I'll always go back to my passion for urban poor. My concern is with the Church of England that we will end up retreating out of our urban poor areas because the church won't have the resources. I'm really concerned that Fit for Mission doesn't cause that to happen more. Some of our buildings, when we look at right buildings, some of the buildings that are in the poorest state are not to be surprised really that they're in the areas where there is a little money and they've not had the care. Well, that's something that's wrong with the whole of the Church of England. I'm getting on my political high horse here, but I've pushed for our diocese to support one another. We know that Liverpool Diocese is really strapped for cash and assets. Liverpool Diocese does not have historic assets that we can draw on, and also things like our land values have not got value. So, we've got very little money per person. And yet there are dioceses up and down the country where there is masses of money. I love the redistribution. Well, surely that is what Scripture calls us to. But that's also what we're called to locally. And yes, whilst this isn't about money, and I'm not going to, rob Peter to pay Paul, actually the more we work together, the more we understand the challenges of our neighbour, and that's transformative.
No. On a more local level, I'd like to do a bit of a shout out to the Fit for Mission team, because I think it's been a bumpy road.
Absolutely.
It's not always been smooth, but I think having the infrastructure of the Fit for Mission team has been really helpful. And when we have hit a problem, I've always felt there's been someone to go to. People have heard, have listened, people have amended things and changed things, and I think that's been really helpful, having that structure, having the coaches, having the staff, having the specialists. I can remember as area dean, saying years ago we needed someone who had, I didn't know what the experience was, but to come and look at our church buildings, because the area deans were being asked to do it. And I'm like, I've got no expertise in buildings. We need, I don't know, a surveyor or an architect or somebody to help us. And then, and then they've delivered with the Right Buildings project, and we're getting people with that expertise. And I think that's made a big difference, actually, because we haven't got those skills, and we've been able to sort of have those in. So, yeah.
Our final question then, how has the shadow PCC worked in practice? Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, and this was before we were legal. We couldn't have a PCC, we had to have the shadow PCC. So it wasn't really making decisions, it was beginning to sort of work together. You're doing all the preparation work. We had a lovely moment with us, because it was difficult. Again, we were like the first cohort, and we didn't know how to do it.
What is a shadow PCC?
Yeah, we were making up as we go along. And we just asked for volunteers. And we had a process that we'd agreed of how to sift out from these volunteers who should be in these 11 places. So I forget how many it was. I think it was 11. We had 12 volunteers or 13. So we just said, we'll have all of them. We won't sort of, why would we say no to anybody? And then we got there in the first evening, and Archdeacon Simon came, and we said, we'll just go around and find out from everyone, who you are, what church you're from, and what your specialist interest was. And it was just phenomenal, because we had someone who was really interested in safeguarding, someone who was really interested in finance. And when we went round, it was quite gobsmacking, because we just had this amazing range of experience, and it just felt like a really holy moment, because it just felt like God's fingerprint was on it, and God had provided for us. And they were a lovely, forgiving group of people, because we didn't know how to run a PCC. We never had one before. It didn't really have any power. And we worked that out together. And I think that again was was quite a holy thing. A bit like the disciples didn't know what they were doing when Jesus first called. And we were in a similar sort of boat. Well, what shape is this? What does it do? How does it work? And we had to be patient with each other, and we had to be gracious to each other, because we were making mistakes together. But I really enjoyed that process. I was sad to see the end of the SPCC. But we have a PCC, and some of those people have stayed on. We've got some new people, and the PCC operates as any other PCC would. We couldn't have an annual parochial church meeting, so it was just a PCM. So we called it our special PCM. And of course, there wasn't much agenda, because we didn't have accounts for the last year and all of it. It was just a beautiful celebration. So we had lay people from each church come up and say something that had been working really well. And it was just lovely to be together. And we did a bit of a shout out for all the churches at the beginning. And someone afterwards commented, everyone wasn't all sat together. People from different churches, they weren't all just sitting with their mates. They were blended in, and people were shouting out from different parts of the building. So it was just that for me is what Church St Helens is about. It was all coming together in our diversity and being one. And I think from the outside, people think, they can't understand that not every church is represented. It's not like we say we want someone from St Philip's, someone from St Paul's. We want the best people for the job. Yeah, we want someone who's really good at finance. We want someone who's great at safeguarding, and we want every aspect of the church represented. And we definitely want people who represent the geography of the different parts of our parish. That's really important. But you don't need a rep from every church. So far, I think, someone needs to get in touch with me if it's not working, but I've only heard that it is working. And I think it is. And certainly from the attitude, the people who are on it are so sort of graceful about that. We haven't got people coming with a particular flag to fly, or always talking about their church, or everyone seems to get it, that they're there for everybody, which is lovely.
Not PCC, and I've not mentioned it so far, so I'm just going to give it a plug, is one of the things that we've been doing is this regular sort of supper and speaker event, which is a bring everyone together, and the people who come absolutely love it, and it has been really transformative of relationships. But if you don't come, you'll never know, and that's just true for so many of these things. If you don't engage, if you just sit in your silo and not involved, you will feel like this is being done to you, or you may wonder what on earth's going on and nobody's telling you, because we're not trying to hide anything, and we need everyone to be pulling their weight so that we can move forward. We need all the coals in the fire.
Thank you, Helen and Chris. We've obviously covered a lot of topics today, and it's been really great to hear your thoughts and your experiences, and I'm sure this will be really beneficial for people. Before we finish, do you have any final reflections?
It's been really helpful looking back because you forget how far we've come, and it's really interesting hearing from you, Helen, because I think there's things you're doing better.
We're always learning from each other, and we enjoy touching
really
base.
Encouraging.
I would say though, I think the church is going to be stronger because of going forward together. And there are still hurdles, there are still obstacles, there are still things to work through, but we're in a far better place. The churches who are in than I think we were, and I don't think any of us want to.
No.
Thank you both so much, and thank you for listening.